So hello, my name's Dave Searle and I'm a British IFMGA guide based out in Chamonix, France. Today I'm going to tell you the difference between these three boots. Now there are some similarities for sure. They're all orange, they're all made by Scarpa and they all have Vibram outsoles. But that's where the similarities end. Yes, there's different designs when it comes to the cuffs, for example. There's also different materials that are used on the uppers. So this is a split grain leather, for example, and over here is a synthetic material. But that really doesn't change the performance of the boot that much. It does make some subtle differences when it comes to weight, breathability, and waterproofness, but those aren't really things that people notice that much when they're actually using these different boots. The biggest thing that changes is the Vibram sole unit itself, and these three boots have three very different Vibram outsoles. So let's talk about each one and the pros and cons of each and why you might choose one over another. So this is the Zodiac Tech GTX from Scarpa, and this boot would be a really interesting choice if you wanted a do-it-all boot for summer alpine activities, whether it's trekking, via ferrata, or heading up and doing some light mountaineering. The outsole is a Vibram Mont compound, and this balances durability with structural support without compromising on traction. Some of the features of this outsole include multi-directional lugs and also a good stable perimeter crown around the outside here. This ensures reliable traction on dirt, rock and residual snow, and also a smooth and progressive walking roll. This area back here is called the heel brake, and on this boot it's quite pronounced, so it gives you good control when you're walking down that steeper terrain. It has a medium-sized climbing zone at the front here, and that gives you a nice area that you can put onto small ledges and edges, so they feel pretty good when you're scrambling, doing via ferrata and that type of thing. It's also B2 compatible, so it has a lug at the back here for a semi-automatic crampon. So how does something like this compare with a boot like this? Now on paper, these actually weigh a very similar amount. And yes, there's some differences in the uppers, but essentially it could be quite difficult for you to choose between these two different boots. However, when you look at the underneath of these boots, you do see a big difference in the outsole that's being used. This boot is the Scarpa Ribelle Tech 3 HD, and this is a perfect boot for light and fast alpine ascents. It has the Vibram Mega Grip outsole, which gives exceptional grip in both dry and wet conditions. This compound has a lower stiffness than other outsoles that we're talking about today, which means that it's actually really good for smearing and getting maximum grip on steep rock. The 6mm lugs that have been used on these boots have been inspired by trail running shoes, and the idea is to give you maximum traction when you're moving quickly on mixed terrain. This boot actually has a smaller climbing zone at the front, which for some people might not actually be that ideal. If you're a relatively inexperienced climber, you might actually find that that is a little bit more difficult to use on edges and ledges, but if you're a more experienced climber who actually relies more on smearing when you climb, this boot actually works much better because these lugs actually deform more easily and give you more traction when you're smearing. The heel area on these boots is a little bit longer and there's less of a heel brake, so they might not feel as secure going down on mixed terrain, but you can keep the speed up a little bit when using these boots, so that could be something that you're looking for when you're getting a technical alpine climbing boot like this. And finally, the Scarpa Mont Blanc Pro. This uses the same compound as the Zodiac Tech, the Vibram Mont, and it gives you an ideal rigidity and precision for winter mountaineering. When we're operating in more snowy and icy environments, it's really important that the outsole is nice and stiff because we might be using this area on the outside to kick sideways into the snow and cut a little ledge in the snow for us to stand on. The central lugs are wedge shaped, which helps with snow clearing when you're walking in that fresh layer of snow. This boot has a big climbing zone, which is great for things like the normal route of Mont Blanc, for example. This boot's also got an aggressive heel brake, which is really good when you're walking downhill in snow. And of course it takes a fully automatic crampon because it's a B3 boot, so it has a lug at the front here and also at the back. So let's kind of summarize things a little bit. The Zodiac Tech is the perfect balance between performance and durability, and it might be the only boot that you need during the summer months. The Ribelle Tech boot is really ideal for those who want to move fast, but it might not necessarily be ideal for those who don't have much experience in the mountains. The Mont Blanc Pro really is a boot that you're going to be using in snowy and wintry conditions. This boot doesn't necessarily climb on rock as well as the other two boots that we're talking about here. So there you go. I hope you learned a little bit about mountaineering outsoles in this video. If you want to find out more information, then head over to vibram.com. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you around.